Unit 4, Topic D, Use calculated fields in query. In the previous topic, we extended some of the selection criteria for queries, and in this topic I want to show you that we can go even further by using what is called a calculated field. That means that we can take the output from one field in a query and manipulate it and place it in another field. For instance, what I'm going to do as an example is to show you that we have in the orders field we have a shipping fee, and I'm adding shipping fee to the query and then running it, and here we see the shipping fees that apply for all of the orders for all of our companies. Now, some of those shipping fees are zero and some of them have real amounts. Let's imagine that the shipping fees that are listed in that table are excluding VAT, and we would actually like to see what the VAT component of every shipping fee is. Now, the VAT component is something that we don't need to go and type into a table. And the reason for that is that there is always going to be a formula or a calculation that we can use to calculate that value. We know that right now our VAT rate is 14%. So whatever value we multiply with 14% or 0.14 is always going to be the VAT component of a particular order. This is how we would go about doing it. I am going to take the next available open space in the query grid, and in the field I'm going to show you how to use what is called an expression builder. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to take shipping fee as a field and simply multiply it by a factor of 0.14, and that should give us the VAT component. If we add that onto the shipping fee, then we would have a VAT inclusive amount. Now, the query builder is a interactive graphical design wizard that allows us to manipulate all of the fields and calculations and operators using the mouse instead of typing them in. And the reason for not wanting to type them in is that we are prone to making a lot of spelling mistakes, and every smallest little spelling mistake will completely invalidate the query. And this is how it works. If I right-click the mouse in that first available query field, the drop-down list gives me what is called the build option, and when I click on it, I open up the expression builder, and we use the expression builder quite often if we want to manipulate particular fields and do calculations based on whatever fields are inside of a query or a table. The expression elements on the left for what we're trying to do sits inside of the Northwind sample database. If I expand that, I know that the field we're looking for is inside of a table, and that table is called orders. Now, the moment I click on orders, the different fields in the orders table are in the middle section, and when I go look for a field called shipping fee, that expression value now is a little placeholder, and when I click OK, the placeholder will revert. The shipping fee is a field inside of the orders table, and that expression value, when I double click on it, is placed inside of the expression builder space at the top. Do not worry too much about what happens there. Basically, what the expression is now telling us, that there is a field called shipping fee, which is immediately available from a table called orders. That's not really of concern for us now. What we want to do now is to simply use an arithmetic operator called multiply. That's the asterisk. If I type an asterisk and I want to multiply shipping fee by, let's say, 0.14, I have now created an expression which would take the shipping fee field from the orders table, multiply it by 1.14, and place the result inside of the query result data sheet. If I click OK now, there it is. I'm just going to expand that column so that you can see exactly what we are saying. To the left, the additional calculated field that we're creating has now got a name. It's called expression 1, but we can change that name because we want to have some descriptive name for it. So instead of calling it expression 1, I'm simply going to call it VAT, followed by a colon, followed by the expression for the calculated field that I'm creating. I'm pressing enter on the keyboard to confirm that. Remember that anything that you do inside of Access needs to be confirmed by pressing the enter key on the keyboard. Otherwise, you're halfway through something, and if you try to continue, you either lose it or you mess it up. So looking at that field, that additional field that we've now created, we can say a couple of things about that field. Firstly, that field called VAT does not appear anywhere in the customers or in the orders table. It is something that we've created for ourselves. Secondly, that what it will do when we run this query is it will take the shipping fee from the orders table and multiply it by 0.14. So let's test the result. If I click on the run button, I'm running the query, and there is the result. So now we have the VAT component based on the shipping fee. So we can now say that if the shipping fee is 7 Rand, we're going to pay 98 cents VAT on that. If the shipping fee is 300 Rand, the VAT component of that is 42 Rand. Going back to the query design, a couple of other interesting points. Remember that the output from a query is transient. In other words, it does not get stored permanently. So nowhere when you run this query is the VAT field actually going to store the values for VAT. And if you think about it carefully, that's not really necessary. If I have a variable A and a variable B which are stored and I want to multiply them, all I need to do really is to store the multiplication, the formula, the expression that does the calculation. I don't really need to store the values. So anything that is done through a calculated field such as this one does not get stored unless you want to store it, in which case you would go and make a table from this query, or alternatively go and create creating a separate field in a table and storing the calculation inside the field, in which case the field itself stores the calculation and the output from it. But here in the query, whenever I run the query, that VAT component is always calculated and it is never actually stored. It is still valuable, it is still useful to us, but it doesn't really form part of the data in the database. Always be aware of that. Getting back to the query design view, what we've done now is to create a calculated field. I can simply edit that if I want to. It's very simple to enter. It is very simple to edit, and there are various ways of editing it. I can go back to the expression builder, or If I right click on that particular entry, I can zoom and open up what is called the zoom box. And that simply makes it easier to work, because sometimes the expressions that we build are quite long and it is difficult to work with them on a single line. So the zoom box allows us to open up a space where we can easily edit. So let's say, for instance, I want to change this to be the VAT inclusive shipping fee. The first thing I'm doing is everything to the left of the colon is a label. So I'm changing the label for that field. Everything to the right of the colon, remember that is the colon that separates the label from the calculation or from the expression. Everything to the right is an expression. And if I want to now create a single field that gives me one value for the VAT inclusive shipping fee, you would agree with me that I would now have to multiply the shipping fee, by 1.14. If I click OK and I press enter and I run the query, we now see the shipping fee for 12 Rand being an exclusive fee, and if you add 14% onto that, it now becomes 13.68 Rand, which is the VAT inclusive shipping fee. If I drag open this column, you can see the full label of that particular field, and you must remember that this field is a calculated field. It does not belong in any table. It is actually simply part of the query. Going back to the query design, we can now say that similar to the technique that I used here, we can use arithmetic or text operators or logical operators or any other type of available expression in Access to manipulate one or two or three different values that come from either a query or a table or a field. And using the expression builder, we can calculate new values and have the query display the new values for us as part of what the query actually does.